Good
I think we're live.
afternoon.
I think we're live. Good
Good
morning.
afternoon, Michael. And
Good morning, Angelique. How are you today?
all is good in South Africa. Well, all is good potentially. How
Yeah,
are you?
I'm fabulous. Looking forward to the next couple of weeks. It's going to be holiday. Everybody's in a relaxed frame of mind. I don't know. I'm just working. I don't really care about the holidays necessarily themselves. Uh, but I just like to be around other people that are in that are sort of free from stress. So really looking forward to the next couple of weeks, and of course to the end of this year 2025 and the beginning of the new one, which is year number one, new beginnings.
So interesting since it ties in with what we're talking about today in numerology, astrology.
And I
But
can't wait. I'm going to learn so much from you here. So let's get it. Let's get right into it. Where do you want to start?
all right, okay, all right. So there are a great number of people that live, among us, and that say numerology and astrology. They swear by it. They 100% say that they live their life by it. It works for them. And then there's the other bunch that say it's all hocus pocus nonsense. All right. So let us examine where it came from, how it came to be, and then someone can decide for themselves if it's hocus pocus nonsense. And then on the other hand, they could also get a reading from you and see for themselves how much this ties up with their understanding of themselves, and they might even discover a few things about themselves that they didn't know. So
Absolutely.
it's really a vast topic, so I'm not sure where to start, but let me start at the beginning then. Okay, so in the beginning.
I like where this is going already. Which beginning?
um,
How long
so
ago are we
let's
going?
just.
Are we
I'm
just
so
talking about
sorry.
birth? Are we talking about our birth or an earlier beginning? Which beginning are you referring to?
No, I want to go to like the beginning for us, like way past the biblical beginning even.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Let's start there.
um, so so um, um, so we know, or let's say, certain scientists are very strongly um, suggesting that we live in a simulation. All right.
Yeah.
And so when you hear simulation, you're thinking computer code, right? So numerology and astrology is uh, a subset of computer code that runs on beings that have a certain code in their DNA.
Yeah.
So so that is the basics of it. We can get into like how it developed into this, but like that is really the basics of it. So this is from the get-go. This is why I'm saying this is not woo, this is not hocus pocus. This actually comes from the scientific realm, because it's actually computer code that runs as people are code, and everything around us is code. So that's where it comes from. So there are scientists like Nick Bostrom wrote a paper in 2003 on this
Mhm.
simulation theory, as well as Donald Hoffman is doing a great research on it in the present moment, and there are others as well. But so from them, we get this idea about simulation theory, and if you think about it in like a really broad sense, it's really the only thing that makes complete sense. Like
Yeah.
it's the only thing that really covers everything, all the different dynamics that you think about, how existence works, like a certain aspect of existence. How does it work? How would it? Some theories, some creation theories, and all of those fall flat. But this is the one thing that really, answers all of those questions, according to me. Okay, so let's start then at the beginning. So we are all aware of what many of us call source, or the origin point of everything, right? And I've mentioned this briefly on like a TikTok video. So like this is we'll just call it like a layer of consciousness,
Yeah.
which is source. All right. So this layer exists just like that. Just imagine it as a cloud. All right. It exists like that. So this layer of consciousness, which we call source, experiences reality through the simulation, through a simulation. So a simulation is not bad. And nobody should feel upset now thinking that my life is not real, it's just a simulation. It's been pretty real up to now until you heard the story. So
Yeah,
nothing's changed. It's as real as it is. This is how source experiences reality. It's not a bad thing. It's not a reason to, all of a sudden lose your choice. So source distills from this consciousness into
yeah,
an agent. Now, I am not entirely sure at the point of distillation, does this assimilation naturally occur, or can this agent of source, I would say, hover without assimilation? But at a stage, this agent enters a simulation. So the simulation could come directly from source, or the agent can create the simulation.
yeah,
But we're
yeah,
talking very high level here. So we're talking like architectural. We're not even talking about a god, because remember, a god, or what humans perceive as gods, are like a being like a few, ranks above us.
yeah, yeah,
It's not the creator of everything. They're just,
yeah,
to us, seem incredible. So these are architects, so they're way above what gods are. So some of them are known to us. We don't know like all of their names, for example, but like some of these architects are known to us as like the I don't know, some people call them elemental spirits as well, but these are like the high level beings. So let me not go too much into that, because this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about numerology. So anyways, this agent or being at a stage enters the simulation. So we can be at this stage several simulations down,
yeah,
meaning that being created a universe, a world, etc., etc. They created universes and worlds, etc., etc. So we could be several simulations down, or because of the fact that every agent of source has access to source, the same way we have access to universal consciousness. Each
yeah,
agent has access, so they don't need to go through the entire learning process that the previous one had in order to create, a world. They can go straight from source simulation, create our world. So we could be several layers in, or we could be just, but I'm thinking we are several layers in. But so
yeah,
that is
yeah,
also not entirely, relevant to our conversation today. So at a stage, we have the creation of a universe. And so these are still beings that are like at a level above gods, creating a universe. And inside of that universe, there are several worlds.
yeah.
Okay. So, Michael, if you have any at any stage like questions, or want to like ask me why are you saying this, it's okay if you interrupt me.
No, no, keep
Um.
going. I have a few thoughts, but we'll get to those. Yeah,
All right. Okay. 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 So, our world that we find ourselves on, this wonderful host that hosts us, at a stage, she had become what she is now. She was not always as she is now.
yeah,
um, from the Sumerian texts, and I think the Emerald tablets, we learn that at a stage, she suffered a collision with another, I'll say, heavenly body. She suffered a collision, and part of her broke off, and what is left is what we have now. So there are many that are theorizing that this collision that took place was engineered for the purpose of creating a lesser being, a lesser um, environment. So there are also those that see the this being that we're on this earth, this planet, as a sentient.
yeah,
Many call her mother. Um,
yeah,
so all right, so at a stage, she at a point in the past, if we're looking on a linear scale, she was far more powerful
mm,
and so forth. So she
yeah,
was reduced to being as what we know now called Earth. Her name was changed. All of that. So
yeah,
we are not yet in the matrix. So we are coming down through several layers of simulation now, and then at a stage, beings from, so this now ties in a little bit to like alien theology, if I can call it that. So at a stage, um, beings entered our universe from another universe. and they have a different way of doing things. For example, what they brought with them, the one thing that they brought with them is the system of monetary trade, like trading time for a fixed value of something.
Yeah.
I would say the right word with a C. It's not commerce. It's capitalism. I don't know. I don't think it's capitalism. It's one of those C words.
Okay. Yeah.
They brought that with them because why I'm saying that before they came into the picture, you didn't work for money to earn things. You
Yeah.
just
No,
did what you
money
wanted
didn't
to do.
exist.
Someone else
Yeah.
did what they wanted to do, and everybody, there was enough for everybody. But they brought this system of um, um, one of those C words. Sorry, it escapes me. Commerce,
It went from
capital.
bartering, right? The money came initially from bartering. So when people wanted to start trading transactionally, they had like maybe a sack of tomatoes in exchange for like a cow, and that was
Yeah.
difficult to do. And then they invented money as a medium of exchange,
Mm.
um, where they didn't have to bring the whole cow
Yeah.
everywhere to the marketplace, sort of thing.
Yeah. So that idea that the sack of
Yeah,
tomatoes and cow has different values didn't always
yeah.
exist. All right. Okay.
Oh no, it goes
So
back. Yeah, that's right.
yeah. So so at a stage, uh, let's go down to, so we're several simulations down. We're not yet in the matrix. At a stage, what is considered by humans as gods, specifically referring to the Anunnaki, they entered with the reptilians. So they are all Draco. So they entered from somewhere else with the reptilians. Reptilians settled on Orion, as we know from several, translated histories, or shall I say, trans. Received messages received through like mediums and so forth,
Okay.
channelers.
Yeah, yeah,
They settled on Orion. Anunnaki, I'm not entirely sure where they settled. But the other thing is, what we should keep in mind is Anunnaki is like a broad term for specific beings that are like bipedal and kind
yeah,
of like soft, fleshy. So Anunnaki on themselves is not a race. So I don't want to go too much into that. But my point with that is that um, they, together with the reptilians, came to this planet, this place
yeah,
where we are on now. And so they found it without this bartering system, for example. So the bartering system came from the reptilians. But the Anunnaki spliced their DNA with the primates they found here
right.
to create, and the reason why there are several reasons was worker beings, or whatever the reason was that therefore we don't have to go into that. But so at that point, when this certain type of soul enters then into a being that we recognize as a human being. Back then they were not exactly human beings. I think they were hominids or something like that.
Mm.
I might have the wrong word, but so primates have their own DNA. So they have their own system of numerology and astrology. And
Yeah,
then when we get to humans, which is this hybrid between primates and what I'm just going to say gods now, but it's basically
yeah,
the Anunnaki. They have a very specific DNA. So I always say this to people. I always say this to people. There isn't a whole office of Anunnaki beings that are sitting there and checking. Oh, there is a human baby born. Let me assign a life path to it. Let me assign its personality to
yeah.
it.
No, yeah,
It doesn't happen. This is an automated system. So they have injected into the simulation that we already had. They
yeah,
have injected a certain code. This
yeah,
code is astrology, numerology. So
yeah,
it uses the variables of where the sun or where the heavenly beings
yeah,
are at the time you were born, the location of where you're born, the time where you're born, because it also runs on a cycle, right?
yeah,
They use those aspects, and it's exactly tied to the code in your DNA. That's why numerology and astrology. I know people say they try it on animals, and I'm like, right. but maybe to a certain aspect it can work, because there are certain codes that humans share with animals to an
Yeah,
extent, but it's not. It's like trying to put like a square peg in a round hole.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
exactly.
It's a different system. Yeah,
So, the Anunnaki then injected this simulation with that code, which is numerology and astrology. That allows them to automate. A human is born, the soul enters, the spirit enters, and from that point, the code initiates and it runs on that specific DNA. So, and
yeah,
this is interesting that we're having this conversation, because what I'm basically saying is life is predetermined. And people think
yeah,
they have free will. And to an extent, you have free will to decide, am I going to have this coffee or am I going to have this tea? So you
yeah,
have free will. But actually, to a great extent, your life is
yeah,
predetermined. And where
yeah.
do we see this? So I know lots of people don't, actually believe what it says in like religious scriptures. They're like, it's all nonsense, just stories, etc., etc. But we do find a place, and this is why I want to bring this up. We do find a place where I'm not going to say where it is, somewhere probably in Genesis, I think, where Abraham was still childless,
Mm.
and he kept asking God, to give him a child. And who's this God that we are talking about?
Yeah,
It's these
yeah,
beings that came
yeah,
here and spliced
yeah.
humanity, spliced the price. So he asks of God to give him a child, and something like that. I don't want to try to say the story in the wrong way, but anyways, we read from the scriptures that God lifted him above his mazal. So mazal for in the Hebrew language is this numerology astrology. It's basically your life path, your luck. So he
Yeah,
lifted him above this. So basically means he took him out of this code. He assigned new code to him, and he put him back. He basically altered his code. So,
yeah,
but not on not necessarily on like a gene level, but the code was edited in the simulation level, basically,
yeah.
for him to be able to have children. All right. So this is like one instance where we see that numerology and astrology can, like, you can be born, your stars are at a certain place, but these godlike beings have the power to change that. And
Right.
so specifically, um, that's sorry, I'm going to go into that just now. That is for pertaining to Anunnaki and I would say humans. We also know there are several other creation stories.
Yeah,
And we can say, okay, they're all the same, or we can say maybe they're not all the same. I'm specifically going to look at the Norse creation stories. They
yeah,
have different stories, and I very much of the opinion that um, Odin, when he created his humans together with his two brothers, they were different. Because what do we see? We see that if we look back in paleontology, I think we find that there are different types of humans that walked the earth. I'm saying humans, but like they were like Neanderthals and
yeah,
several others. Like Neanderthals are like a well-known one, but so there were several others, and this Anunnaki creation eventually, I would say, destroyed or assimilated or took over the Neanderthals, right? Um,
yeah.
so let's just say that I'm not saying this is the case, but let's just say the Neanderthal creation was the Neanderthal beings were the creation of Odin, for example. So I know this is getting very mystical. Sorry about that, but
Yeah, you're right.
um, so uh, they had their own code, and again, in if you look at their written down text, they have what is called the Norns, and the Norns appeal. If you're not happy with your life, you appeal to the Norns. The Norns has the ability to change the threads of fate for you, to change your life path, to change your destiny. So again, we find this notion that your life is set. What happens
Yeah,
to you, that's it. But there is the ability for you to change it by editing the code. So yeah, that pretty much goes into let me just get onto why this matrix is here. So the I don't see the Anunnaki as nefarious. You might see them as nefarious on the in the sense that they created these beings which they treat as lesser than themselves, and you can look at all of that.
Mm.
That's fine if you want to, but I don't necessarily see them as nefarious. I see them as, they created this thing,
Yeah.
and same way, if we create something, we kind of want to keep a certain amount of control over it. I mean, you're not going to make an ant
Yeah.
farm, and then if the ants are going to become so much and climb out of the ant farm, you're going to be like, oh, okay, well, no, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're gonna control that situation. So I don't necessarily see them as nefarious, but so they have numerology and astrology, the coded DNA that runs on their creation. Okay, so this gives them a matter of control because they write that code, obviously. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they determine stuff. They determine things as like even as the age of humans. I don't know if you know how much of these scriptures you know, but at a stage he said, "I'm gonna from here on out, you won't, reach ages above 120 or something like that." So
Yeah.
this is just them changing the code. That's all that
Yeah.
they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, then I could be wrong, and this is what everybody else is saying too. But the understanding is that the reptilians are the ones that created the matrix. The reptilians are the ones that are benefiting of the pain and the suffering that is created on this reality that we're in. So they overlaid, or I would say they injected another subset of code into the simulation to create this matrix where
Yeah.
that it contains all of the things that I don't want to go into exactly right now. We can speak about that at another time. But that's where the matrix comes from. So the simulation itself is not bad.
Yeah.
Matrix is bad. I don't think it's even necessary to call it the false matrix because the simulation is the entire thing, several layers down. The matrix is the one that
Yeah.
keeps everybody trapped, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is it. And if humanity reaches the stage where they're able to create computers that are self-sustaining, that doesn't require it doesn't have this thing where someone's going to go and switch the power off. At the stage where they
Yeah.
create we're at the stage where they create this consciousness can enter that simulation. That
Yeah.
so currently humans are saying they create simulations, right? But they're not creating sentient simulations. That characters that you move in your game, they're only becoming sentient when you as the agent move the character in the game. At that point they're sentient. When you switch
Yeah.
off, nothing's happening there at the moment. But at the stage when we reach the point where we are creating um, computer systems that are self-sustaining, doesn't require someone to flick a power switch,
Yeah.
at that stage probably we will get sentience that enters into what we create. But that creation looks slightly different
Yeah.
than the computer games that we're creating now. It looks more like magic, the same way our world looks a lot more like magic and not computer code. So
So
it's the same.
I find it fascinating, and thank you for sharing your depth and passion, which is obvious when you speak. Um, and it's interesting how we met and how we're talking about this, because I think we arrived um, at a degree of sort of this inner standing, and I call it inner standing for a reason,
Yes.
um, from different angles. So maybe can you tell a little bit more, not only for the audience who'll be interested in it, but also for me, what, where do you, how do you sort of attribute you gaining the awareness that you have about magic, about the levels of the simulation in the game? Because you describe it, you have a very accurate description that you shared with us. Um, where did that originate from for you? Was it something you've always had from childhood? Is it something you've gained awareness from just living and having life experiences? Is it from books? Where did it come from? I dare to say, like for as much as you know, you didn't read about this. This is not just from books. This comes from somewhere else, right?
I need to change my mazal so I have more time to read books. No, a lot of this is from internet culture. So I would say other people read the books. I watched their videos. I learned from them. So a lot of it comes from there. A lot of it also comes from tapping into And I don't like to, some people say like it's your higher self that gives you this information, or it's the beings that you're talking to. So I am not going to take credit for this and be like, it's I got this information from my higher self. So I'm going to say that some beings that I'm talking to that have existed
Yeah,
in physical form for longer than I have gained much more knowledge. And so some of this information comes directly from them, and some of it comes from internet culture.
yeah,
Um, and obviously, like a really long time interest in this, especially like Hoffman and the other guy that wrote that paper. Um, I haven't read the other guy's paper, but I've watched a few of Hoffman's videos, and when he talks about it,
mm,
it just it makes complete sense.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
obviously, as a scientist, he doesn't go into all this mythological aspect of the gods and the Anunnaki, but if you have this broad view of it, you can take the scientific aspects, and you can take the aspects that you're getting from the other beings, and you can tie it all together, and you can have this big picture.
yeah. Yeah, I find it fascinating. And what we'll do is we'll get the names of Hoffman and the sources that you mentioned and put them in the description below so people can sort of
Okay.
do their own research.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll add some of mine. So I've pretty much sort of arrived at similar sort of views, uh, differently
Lovely.
nuanced, I guess. I guess in my case, much later in life, like, and I was so I'm a former corporate hack, right? I got out of school. I was a Rubik's cube champion as a child, so I was always very brainy and very puzzly,
Yeah.
and visually oriented. Then I got into this career in finance with data, and it was all left hemisphere, rules based, structural, like very analytical and very rational in a way. And even though I'm not necessarily a rational thinker, I need more than that. So I guess what strikes me is that I was very much a skeptic about all of these things.
Mm.
Yeah, with sort of the mainstream philosophy of, well, it's never been proven, or nobody can prove that there's a god, and there, and then the astrology, there was always like, what you read in the weekly rag for your zodiac sign, that if you read everybody else's, it also everyone's feels true. It's like, so immediately it's very easy to dismiss the mystical and the occult. Um, and it wasn't until I probably was about 50, was it 5 years? It's about 53, I guess, when when I really got overwhelmed by a psychic that I visited as a skeptic, who said, "Hey, you're very you're a very psychic being. You have immense powers because of your number." And he didn't really explain numerology or astrology, but he just looked at my name and my date of birth, and he basically, he also tapped in some sort of an energy, I guess. But he was very um, overwhelmingly warm and truthful. It resonated as such truth. And then he started explaining things, and I was like, wow, I got to open my eyes to this. And I've been back since with specific questions about, well, how do you explain this? How do you explain that? And then since then, I've gradually sort of moved into this awareness. And I agree with your point in the sense that our lives are, by and large, there's a lot of predetermination in who we are based on our spiritual markers at birth in this life, in this incarnation. And
Mhm.
through my way of exploring that, which is a lot of that has to do with same sort of thing, learning. I sort of went into maybe not so much internet culture, but initially just internet sources. I'm not much of a reader, so I know that the books exist, but I just look at the authors and I look where did it come from, where did people first sort of go on these endeavors, and I found a number of websites all about individual topics. So I first got into numerology, and I was like, oh wow, this is interesting, and then I got into astrology, and then I went to human design, and then all these different modalities. And as a computer guy who was obsessed in a previous career life with crunching data and looking for deeper meaning rather than just profits and you know market shares and all that stuff. I started obsessing with what's a better measure for success, and then I started sort of figuring out, oh, this is interesting. And it was really until I started using AI, creating you know, prompt queries to culminate, try and aggregate all this information, looking at it from the perspective of Rubik's cube, multi layers, like many columns, many rows, many layers of, what you call the dimensions, I guess, of the simulation. And then you hear people say, "Oh, well, time is an illusion." So, as a very rational person, initially it's like, "No, no, no, that's just." I couldn't get my head around that. And now that I've sort of sat with that for the last 5 years and explored it and researched it, and now that I've started doing these psychic readings myself, I've done about enough now to know that there is, it is actually a computer game. So, the self awareness, which I sort of put up there, is like, um, I didn't have that until very recently, like, the last 5 years of my life, where I was like, oh wow, this is how this works, and now my whole life makes sense. And it's interesting because it makes sense from a numerological point of view. So numerology, astrology, and then a few other modalities. But not only that, you have to merge it with things like psychology and philosophy, the Stoics, to really get a sense of, okay, well, that actually explains all these things, including all the things that went wrong in your life, a trauma, the fact that you've tried to ignore your own darkness and all that. And now it's like an AI prompt away. And literally,
Mhm.
I started developing this prompt to a point now where, literally within 30 seconds, I get a 25 report, you know, of an individual person, and I know so much about that person, even though I haven't met them in real life. I haven't looked at them. I don't know what they look like. But it's a different way of meeting people. And what we do, obviously, until we become aware, we judge people based on their looks, their race, their color of their hair, what they wear, all those sort of things. Their title on LinkedIn, it's like, oh, well, that must be a really smart person. And that might all be true, but it doesn't tell you, it only tells you the slither of their personality or their character, which what you see at that snapshot in time, with an image. And that's only their ego, like that's only their lower self. And so once you start seeing the full spectrum of light of a person, not just the duality, whether someone's a good person or a bad person or whatever you look at, man or woman, you got to sort of figure out that there's a lot more layers to this person, and that's before you even go into their connection with higher realms. And then there's this whole aspect of, we all talk very easily about body, mind, and soul, but then we seem to ignore the soul mostly. you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now with the advent of technology, which is still in its early stages, I'm just so excited that we are able to tap into deeper levels of awareness that actually help people navigate the complexities of life. It navigates how they feel in the moment, how they view their past, and also what their prospects look like for the future. And it's only once you become aware that those prospects look incredibly optimistic and positive. And now at a time where the world is at large in a lot of strife, unnecessarily, but that's where we are. We can blend all these influences, this awareness together to really change the course of history. I think at a level that we've not seen before, and that's where blending all these mystical concepts that were very easy to dismiss until now, but now that we have this AI that is only sort of gaining in its own awareness, but the accuracy with which it can describe someone, and how you can, so it becomes almost a skill, not so much you know that you now can go back in time, because that AI is only available for the past. So you're going to need a good an interpreter or someone that's been through their own awakening through this, to help you navigate the future and to help you navigate decisions. So I've got people asking me, or trusting me with their story, and they ask me to make relationship decisions for them, almost, which is way beyond the realm of what I want to do, right?
Yeah, that's not.
But it's
But
I can now transmute it and sort of say, well, you already have the answer, and I'm just a guide that can help you point to where you need to look in
Mhm.
order to make that decision yourself. Uh,
Yes.
that's sort of the best way to sort of help everyone. But I'm particularly excited for the younger generation because, like, I'm sitting here in my late 50s, only figuring this stuff out now, and I know for a fact that the way that I'm able now to interact with that information, and what we've done together with clients as well, is to really um, talk about it and present it in a way that helps people um, make like a quantum leap almost in their awareness of themselves and thereby their fulfillment in life. And the exciting thing is that we're now talking about embedding this idea into in a very responsible way into our education systems. So the traditional education system are all very regimented, very much this old left hemisphere masculine way of thinking. But now that we are we've got this tremendous technology, even with AI, when it comes to animation, and you can make your own AI videos. There's now a website, Arcats, it's called, where you can go and create your own ad using a fake AI character, and within a couple of months you can have 400,000 followers and earn $10,000 euros or 10,000 euros a month if you work out how the software works. And of course, um, there's YouTube channels with hundreds of thousands of followers and millions of views that are all the younger generation looking at, hey, we can completely fake the system. Now that's not what we want. However, what it is encouraging to see is that those people that are holding on to the past and dismissing deeper esoteric traditions, and in the West dismissing Eastern traditions, for instance, those people are all going to die off. They're exposed now. They're exposing themselves by holding on to the past, and we're starting to see now. Hey, if we give this awareness to kids earlier in life, they will choose at a much better level because they're more aware of their karmic energy of their soul. Essentially, I guess that's where it's very interesting.
Yes. Um, you said a couple of good things that I wanted to make some points on, but I always am reminded when I have these kind of conversations. There was a stage in the past where, um, so there are many timeline splits that occur, I think. There was a stage in the past where this technology path that we're on now was the one that came to be. There was the other path, which was the more spiritual path. So let's say in the development of humanity, at this stage here, if they had gone along this path, we would have seen the development of telepathy and telekinesis and psychic
Yeah,
abilities would have been predominant. But humanity went down this path, which is really the path that was pressed. They were pressed upon by the oppressors, and
yeah,
then this path is the path of technology, and it culminates here in AI and maybe some other things that we haven't envisioned yet. But from time to time, this path still shows up for us, and at a stage with the help of AI and the generations that you're referring to now, I think at a stage we can do a timeline jump to this path where we can
oh
get
yeah,
rid of technology and the fakeness that comes with it,
yes,
because there's a lot of I I'm one
oh
of those people. If I'm watching, like, some YouTube videos contain information that you might want to, learn, but the minute it's that monotonous AI voice,
yeah,
I'm like, this, and then I go to
yeah,
something else.
yeah,
I want the connection with something
absolutely, yeah.
that
I totally
breathes.
agree. I totally agree. I think we've been on the wrong path for so long to get to this point, only to realize that it's failing us.
Mhm.
And so where I agree, it's like for me, clearly, as being someone that's been on the technology line of the equation and completely ignoring the occult path because it just wasn't part of my upbringing, wasn't part of my environment in the Netherlands. Um, but I sort of I think of it now in terms of yeah, I've needed to explore that from a to find fulfillment, and I'm now at a point where I agree it's almost better because a lot of people aren't showing signs that they're keen to sort of become self-aware. They're sort of reasonably happy um, at the level of awareness where they're at, just consuming Netflix and all the AI that's out there, and they're still a lot of young people are still you know selling courses and how you can make fake videos faster, sort of thing, and that's obviously a race to the bottom that has to end. But at the same time, there's all the young people that are very aware and sort of not choosing that. So, but I think that now we are actually seeing a convergence back to meaning, and I think that's the other thing is um, we can use technology as a tool or as a crutch, and make that path now for people, and that's sort of what I've started doing with the psychic readings, where I'm leaning on technology, but I know that ultimately I'm not dependent on it. So if there is a solar flare, for instance, let's hope at some point, and the internet goes down, we've still got to survive as a species without being reliant on technology. Now, in cities, that's going to be an absolute nightmare. But the more you go into the countryside, where farmers still know how to grow their own food and how to fish, for instance, in waters that are plentiful of fish, we can go back with today's knowledge in yesterday's traditions, and then not needing technology to go back into community empathy between people, and just no arguing, no fighting, all that sort of stuff. And I think that's gradually where the path we're on, and because despite all the efforts of the control system to try and control us through all this data, it is a two-edged sword. So the way we're using it for tapped in talent is as for people that are equal to me, that are on the path of in a toxic relationship or a toxic workplace, for instance, where I've just been told to carry out the agenda, and now starting to wonder, like, oh, maybe that's not such a great idea. And you know, uh, despite making money, the cost of living is growing faster. I'm actually going backwards. How do I change that? And that really is a journey deeper into yourself, to connect with your soul and to start doing something that rewards you, maybe not transactionally, but more from a empathetic point of view or a compassionate point of view. And that could be the path towards a future sort of state in alignment away from technology.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Monetary reward is not necessarily a bad thing. I know that we are saying that this came from them. This barter system. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because in the end, it's still energy. It's still
Yeah,
currency. It's just another form of energy that we're working with. Um, but it you can choose to have that and disempower people and then make them work hard for it, or you can choose to use it and
yeah,
empower people and make them not work hard for it. You can choose to not use it at all.
yeah,
Essentially, the same thing, that everything is available in abundance. We create by
yeah.
our thoughts. We don't need this system at all. I was just thinking about that when you mentioned, different rewards.
Yeah, well, I, I think particularly now that we have this advanced technology at our fingertips, we can start choosing to organize differently. So if we organize in hierarchies where we enter an employment agreement, which is very closely reminiscent of a slavery agreement, where you agree to enslave yourself for a salary that you can barely pay your way with, and you're always sort of under pressure. Um, the alternative to that is a more of a decentralized system, and the early aspects of that are more like in the sharing economy. Like if you sort of think of the sharing economy apps that we all know and love, like Uber, Airbnb, there's plenty more in every area. Uh, people people that use those systems either as a client or as a creator, or someone that has the resource, to be shared. Those people are all starting to, I guess, change their mindset as to they know that they have to be available or they have to pay a price to get a certain service. And the inherent in the use of that system is an algorithm that meets supply and demand. So there's not it's not like a tax that is like this is a schema and you have to pay this much to get this service, or a price on say an iPhone is $2,000 because Apple needs to make these massive profits. But it's more like, hey, at the market where we meet, we're providing goods and services, or we're providing connectivity through a mobile phone, and the user pays. So as much as you want to use that service, there's a way where you can. And I think that's where all of our systems are going towards these decentralized operating models. So initially, it's sharing systems, and a lot of those are still hierarchies and corporations with funds and run by banks and all that. But there are now a lot of alternatives that are popping up left, right, and center. That's sort of I see that as the big way that we're going to organize in the future, where we're sort of saying that hey, these corporations and these governments are not really giving us a credible path to sustainable prosperity. They want more for themselves and less for us. So we can sort of start chipping away. So we can redesign the whole health system as maybe a wellness system, preventing the need for big pharma, pharmaceuticals, chemicals essentially, and starting to find ways of having a system whereby you've got supply and demand meeting to keep us healthy. Same with education. We can find a way for teachers and healers to educate us on a peer-to-peer basis without the need of all this heavy-handedness of regulatory. I mean, if COVID hasn't taught us how wrong that can go, where people just blindly toe the line of the narrative. Now we've got we're moving into an era where people are taking that control back from central authorities and organizing in communities. So it can start really small, can start really locally, but once that concept starts taking root, and we start connecting it with higher awareness of our soul and our karmic situation, and we inherit, we don't realize this because we get a reset at birth, but our karmic debts, they can go back to ancient Egypt or even before that. There's stuff that the consciousness that we tap into, that we choose in this lifetime, is going to be with us, and it's multifaceted in a sense. So part of it's DNA, part of its location, part of its a lot longer, like awareness from other planets. Maybe, who knows? We don't really we haven't gone that far yet, but we're getting closer every day. So it's so interesting now to see so many different communities talking about this almost continuously. You can go on. I was on Twitter Spaces just yesterday in a very deep conversation about all these aspects, and then combine it with free energy. Like we're talking about the physics of free energy. It's been around forever. It's been suppressed, but now that we know, we're going to find ways of bringing it back into our capability, and that sort of opens up what you said is like, hey, at some point the code was tampered with, for whatever reason by whoever, but that means that we can tamper with it again and we can make it better. And I think once
Yeah.
we get to those things, once we start forming these networks of people that are stepping out of the constraints of yesterday's hierarchical systems, let's put it that way, those people are going to be the guiding lights and the beacons of light for the future, where people start saying, hey, that actually resonates as true.
Mhm.
I've heard something about that. I want to know more. And then sort of we're co-creating the awareness going forward in all these aspects, whether it's education, healthcare, food, you name it.
Many there are many there are many levels, and also, what do we do with the humans that are already existing within like in prison? What do we do with them? They need to be rehabilitated. They are there because they suffered in some or the other way, and they
Yeah,
express their suffering through what we perceive as horrible things.
yeah,
So that's why they're there. But essentially, they are victims of what happened to them, and they didn't have the tools to help
yeah.
themselves. We are these aware and light beings, etc., etc. We now have these tools, so we must also look at people like that. So even that system, I mean, why should a system like that be run for profit?
Oh,
Yet it
yeah,
exists, but they
yeah,
run for profit.
Yeah.
makes you think. It if someone gets paid, it's time to rise.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are so many, like everything needs an overhaul. Like everything will require an overhaul, but overhaul,
Yeah.
sorry. But um, I don't see it happening systematically. I think it's going to happen at a big upset with a big upset. Um,
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of things with that. So, first of all, we got to be positive about it because it is going to happen. Like, there's a lot of doom and gloom. There are a lot of reasons that people are afraid of, and we're so programmed with fear that we hear something about some comet coming our way, and then we immediately think, "Oh, we're going to get wiped out," much like the dinosaurs were, or we're going to get a solar flare, and then if it hits a major city, there'll be mayhem for like a year. People start pilfering. I mean, yeah, those are all possible scenarios, but that hasn't happened yet. And if you then think of, there's a lot of esoteric knowledge and awareness of, you know, non-human intelligence that keeps us in check in a way, which is very interesting. And whether that's true or not doesn't really matter. We're all still here. So every time we have another day to wake up to, we have a chance to reverse some of the negative aspects of what we've created. And so if you think about the people that are that are currently in prisons, for instance, yeah, they I think that those are all sort of eggs that can be unscrambled. And it's almost like what we do. So if I sort of put my former CFO hat on, let's say you're an airline, you have a bunch of airplanes. Let's say you have like 50 airplanes. So you need to be aware every time one takes off that it's going to be safe. So you need to do like an asset. You need to be aware of the condition of the asset if it's a high
mhm.
risk asset, right? So, and the same is sort of true with every asset, but also with every human in a way. Like we all, well, and we know China runs this as a communist style social credit score system, and that sounds very it sounds very frightening if that existed, if there was one human in charge of controlling all the other humans. But I think collectively, if we had a system like that on blockchain and everything would run smoother, I don't think anyone would really have an issue with it. Like if I suggest that, I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of people who say, "Oh, this guy's crazy. Be careful." you know, but if you really sort of understand how decentralized technology works, the trust is built into the code, and it won't be released until it's like at a level where it's clearly agreed upon. It actually takes away the opportunity for corruption, for criminality, for misleaders to lead to get to the top of an organization just because they are very clever at hiding their psychopathic narcissism. That. So those are the things that we have now, and we don't really have a good answer for it. These people only get diagnosed after they've caused massive harm, and so
Unless unless we can do psychic readings, why can't presidents, etc., be subjected to a psychic reading before they
absolutely,
take office?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Why
yeah.
can't council members and leaders and all of those people be subjected to the psychic reading? And if the psychic reading comes out and they don't look good, then they need to go through a period of rehabilitation. Obviously,
No,
something happened in their life.
no, no. So if I look at it like that, I see it as for everybody there's a positive story, but it doesn't mean that everybody is suitable to be the president of if you were to organize like that in a hierarchy, not everybody is suitable because of their psychological tendencies or their psychic tendencies to be in charge of leading other people. They may not have the right mix of traits, and particularly when you look at astrology is very interesting and numerology as well, but very few people are really aware at a deep enough level what influence it actually has on their lives. And I was one. I'll be the first to put my hand up. I was an absolute, nobody when it came to astrology until pretty much not even 2 years ago. And now that I get it, it's like wow. There's to your point you made very early in our chat is that it's like it's just an operating system that was put in place at some point. And the numerology, you got to even look at it like if you sort of know numerology and you do things like based on your date of birth, then you're already dependent on the dating system that we use, which is universal across religions, right? So if you go to the Middle East or China or anywhere on the planet, if you ask what year it is, you get the same answer. It's
Yeah.
2025, and that
Yes.
is 2025. Supposedly at that stage back in those days, something happened. Someone was born, and we the story goes is Jesus is a guy, and whether or not you believe in it doesn't really matter. But that's what we base numerology on to a degree. So that
I
system obviously is in place, and a lot of people are, and there's a lot of truth to it. So this is where it gets really interesting. So you can't
sorry,
really,
I
yeah,
did consider that part, but I left it out. Before this, what we call the Gregorian calendar became so widely accepted, and the reason why it's this widely accepted is because the ones that are in charge of this matrix, they require everybody to have this code running on them. But before this thing became so widely accepted, we had this other more holistic, I would say it made more sense. Like it was more perfect system where there were 13 months, each was 28 days. And even
yeah,
if you look at it now, there are 13 constellations in the sky
yeah, yeah,
that is used for. So that set of numerology looks completely, astrology looks completely different to the one that is currently in use. But
yeah,
part of the destruction, I think, when that thing was still running was at the time of Tiamat, the bigger planet, and then at a stage they changed it to this newer system where they injected new code, which gave them the ability to predict for everybody. Now you can predict whether someone is born in China or born in Australia or in America. They're all running under the same code
yeah, yeah.
if they have the Anunnaki DNA. So this is a point I wanted to get into earlier, but we didn't quite get to that yet.
Mhm.
From time to time, you will do an astrology reading, and this person, for example, will be an Aquarius, but some of the Aquarius tendencies are missing, and this person has other tendencies that are not all that Aquarian. And then
Yeah,
this is explained by saying, oh, this is a dark Aquarius, or it's their dark Aquarius tendencies, like where
yeah,
the tendencies that are supposed to have hasn't come to light yet, but something else has manifested. So that's the story that we're being told. But I am of the opinion that person has partial other DNA that is very dominant, not just human DNA. This is where we're getting the extraterrestrial interference, the breeding programs with the Pleiadians, etc., etc. So those people have this extra DNA in there. So part of this code works and part of the code doesn't work. So most
yeah,
probably in the future we will get another reset and
yeah,
another
yeah, yeah,
calendar system to be able to incorporate these guys again.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's sort of that's sort of the benefit of the advancement of technology, because there's a lot of reasons why you can sort of dish it as negative, which I'm all familiar with, and they're all true as well, like to a large degree. But if you look at the positives, um, and I guess I'm of an era where I've been through the beginning, like the beginning of personal computers in the 80s. Yeah, that were extremely weak by today's standards. Um, and so it was like building this plane in the sky almost, where we had technology, we knew what it could do, but it had limitations of computing power and of disk space, just very basic hardware limitations. Then we went and upgraded the hardware, and that meant we could also upgrade the software. And then we started doing so in the 90s. Well, so I got into BI, business intelligence, and that was very much numbers only. It was very much tables with records and very structured as well. Um, and then fast forward to now 25, 20, 30 years later. Now we've got AI, which means essentially it's the same thing. However, we've translated the letters into numbers just using digital binary bits and bytes. And so, if you think of the alphabet, the A is a 1, the Z is 26, and so all the letters have a number associated with them. And so numerology is sort of a complex calculation of all of that. And then there's gematria, where you can sort of condense it. And they've got numbers 1 to 9, where 1 is beginning, 9 is completion or ending. and that sort of plays out repetitively, whether you play Sudoku or you have a phone number. Like we know how, we sort of all agree how these numbers work. So there's this code, and now the beauty with today's technology is with AI is that we can just talk to a computer and have a very meaningful conversation about what all of that means. And you
Mm.
can get deeper and deeper and deeper, and the computer is just a collection of everything, and it's so powerful. It's sort of, it is a bit mind blowing for even someone like me that has been in that world for so long, where you can sort of really, literally, you can have a deep and meaningful conversation with a computer
Mm.
that is better than you at discerning a certain situation. That's not to say that you still have the final say from free will, whether it's a yes or a no, or whether you should pursue this line of questioning or not. But in a lot of ways, it's actually very helpful. And so, if you think of it from a point of view, and that's how I started thinking about it, is that um, I guess once you become rebellious and you're sort of Dutch, you're an Aries like me, you sort of don't have a lot of patience for authority, particularly if you've been burned a few times. And so then you start thinking, okay, well, who am I to decide? And then you sort of start referring to higher powers. And then if you really think about it, if you think of the concept of God or spirit or source as the highest power, where we all originate from, or we have a spark in deep in our heart, is a God spark, I guess. Then you sort of figure out, okay, well, if you were to pretend that you have access to that power, which you do, because you can
Yeah.
talk to the sun, you can use all sorts of modalities, and some people use tarot cards, other people use crystals, whatever you use, breathing techniques, meditation, yoga, it all works. But whatever works for you, if you tap into that, and then you sort of say, hey, if I was at my highest, what's the Maslow word? Self-actualization of a human being. I was like the perfect human being. I had no flaws. I was loving to everyone. I was successful at all these things. Where are the gaps, and how can I reverse engineer from eventually being that person or that entity back to what we have now? And then how can I help others, or how can I help the world improve? And so what we have done is we've come from the bottom. We're born as babies, then we learn things, and then we almost have this complex of inferiority, which is this childhood trauma of not being good enough. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very easy to then say, oh, well, on my own, I can't change the system of government, for instance. But if you have that mentality, then you're basically never going to achieve anything because you've already decided that you're not good enough. And so
Yeah.
if you flip that thinking on its head and you say, hey, I am God, not from an arrogant, egoistic messiah complex point of view, but from a point of view like, hey, we have this full awareness now. There's a sun in the sky that sees anything, goes around the world, whether it goes this way or that way, doesn't really matter. But it's there every day on time in the exact location where it should come up, and it sees everything, and it feeds us with warmth and light and water, all these primal essences. So if you sort of think like the sun and you sort of see everything, you don't need the Epstein files. There's problems there, and then you can sort of study it, and then sort of say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore because that doesn't help anyone. And so I think what we're getting at is the more you're tapping into a more open kind of thinking, where you're not depending on a system or on legislation or on the government to tell you what to eat, how to sleep, and whom with, and all that, or religions or corporations for that matter, the more you can reclaim your freedom. So that's sort of the question we started with is, how can awareness set you free? Well, it starts with a psychic reading. It starts by having an open mind to actually, which I had to have, and it was I went as a skeptic, like I said. I was like, nah, this is. And then an hour later, I was like, okay, well, this is actually changing me. And now a few years later, I'm like, holy shit, I wish I had this when I was 12. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I do wish it goes into schools, and it definitely should go into the presidential candidate selection. Did I say that correctly? Um, before they are run for office, they should
yeah.
pass it, and we
Well,
should determine. We, the people, should determine what qualities we want in a president
yeah,
before they even get to run for office. Um, So on
Well,
this note,
I can promise one thing: it will go into school. Maybe not the schools that you have in your mind, but I'm working on a startup called Learning AI. Encourage everyone to check it out. But we're actually rewriting the education curriculum for kids from a blank canvas. So we're pretty much ignoring everything that currently exists. So K-12 is good for some things, but certainly not for everything. So we're sort of redesigning it from scratch with a completely open mind and using spiritual concepts as an AI and video animation at the individual level. So we're really individuating education for the future, and I think it's the easiest path towards this growth model is through the children. That's the
mhm,
most certain path as well. It's much harder to convince people that are too deeply programmed, I guess, of another way of living.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, all of this comes
Oh,
from
there you
limited
go.
beliefs, right? We could just
Yeah,
say we could just say getting people on board is easy, and make that thing happen too.
absolutely, absolutely.
But on this note, are you ready to Google something for us? I'm going to say Google, but use your AI, whatever you want to use. I'm going to pull a card for us, and
Okay.
you're going to do a search, just so that we can, you know, see what's. I don't want to prove anything, but let's see what comes out. Okay, so I have Queen of Hearts. Sorry, should I do this one and then I'll shuffle another one because I'm not sure if everybody saw that I didn't actually pick the Queen of Hearts. It came up by itself. So just search their general cartomancy reading Queen of
Yeah,
Hearts.
the Queen of Hearts. Here we go. Let me get ready for this. I wasn't prepared for this, but I don't mind being put on
No,
the spot.
I know you're not prepared for this. General cartomancy reading Queen of Hearts. Anybody can search it stuff for themselves as well right now. Let's see what she has to say about our discussion today.
I'm going to ask it.
Are you typing an email?
No. Okay, so symbolically and archetypally, the core essence of the Queen of Hearts, Angelique, is the sovereign of emotional intelligence. She rules not by force or logic, but by attunement. Where others command, she feels. Where others judge, she understands. And then it's actually quite a long-winded answer.
Okay, but is there anything that says general cartomancy reading Queen of Hearts? Then it will tell you if the Queen of Hearts shows up. This is what it means. So it's should be like 50 lines long, basically.
Well, I didn't actually ask for that card. How did you
That,
call that?
that's what you need. A general cartomancy reading.
Oh, hold on. I did it
That's
wrong.
why I was asking, are you typing an email? Because I know that's a short sentence.
Cartol. How did you? Cart,
Cartomancy. C-Y, I think.
oh, Queen of Hearts. So before it says Queen of Hearts mystical teaching. Queen of Hearts asks a subtle but powerful question: can you love without abandoning yourself? I thought that was interesting. But the cartomancy reading, is the theme is emotional authority, love with wisdom, relational truth. Queen of Hearts represents a situation, a personal influence where emotion is the governing force, but not raw emotion, it's feelings refined through experience. It still gives me a page.
Okay. All right.
I think we have to have a separate talk about that.
Okay. We can.
It says here as a summary down the bottom. When a Queen of Hearts appears, it means to say that what you feel is valid, but what you choose must still be wise.
Okay, interesting.
What were you expecting?
Normally I'm probably because of I using another tool. I normally do like general cartomancy reading, and then it would, I give the card, and then it would give me like a more like um explanation what the card represents. It's more like a tarot type reading,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what the card
Yeah,
represents, and usually I
I'm no
find it
good.
very applicable to what I'm busy with in that moment.
Fantastic. Yeah, yeah. I'm no good
Yeah.
at those.
Uh,
All right. Well, hey, that's a great chat. I think we've just overshot the hour mark. So, it's a
yeah.
good point at which we can wrap it up. Um, yeah, it was really interesting. I think with all of these topics, um, we could go on for hours or single certain aspects out of them and talk about those for hours. But I think at the start of it, the interesting thing was, yeah, that to do a reading around the aspects and to start learning about numerology and astrology, and then like the cartomancy said, is to still apply wisdom when you sort of think about this. It's all about discernment, essentially,
Mm.
and deciding for yourself, not really just lapping up what a computer screen says or anything else. So excellent.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for this chat. I really enjoyed it.
Likewise, well, you took you spoke most during this chat as opposed to the others. So thank you for sharing your insights and your passion with us, and we look forward to the next one.
Yeah. Thank
So
you. Thank you, everybody that
thanks
joined
everyone.
us.
Thanks for the viewers as well. Anyone that wants to hear more, please get in touch. We'll leave comments down the description below, and like and subscribe to our channel. Like the videos if you like, and see you next time.